I'll get started here. Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? I'm thinking it's a really good time to be working with our buyers right now. We've been saying, oh, sorry, I was just this guy on the phone here. Um, so a really good time to be working with our buyers right now. I think their little halt in the market kind of boosted stuff. I had listings that were just sitting and sitting, and I would say in the last week or so, my showings have definitely picked up on those. So I think people have a little more confidence to start purchasing right now. So hopefully we'll get our market moving a little bit. So I thought we'll just review working with our buyers, common pitfalls, things to watch out, how to protect yourself, and maybe if we have time, some of the paperwork that we need to that goes along with working with our buyers. Anybody working with some buyers right now and they having a little difficulty with them or anything we can troubleshoot before I get started? I normally have my content to go over, but I always like to reach out to you guys to see specifically what we can troubleshoot and work on that you guys are having issues with. So, I mean, you're having trouble closing a buyer right now, qualifying your buyer. They're not liking, you've shown them 40 things and they don't like anything. How is that all going? Okay, well, normally I like to start off with the basics. So I'm just going to go over here to my regular training. And I like to talk about sort of keys to working with our buyers. So I'll share the screen here. It's kind of, my laptop's doing a funny thing lately. So I'm going to try to expand this here so you can see full screen. There we go. I kind of have my screen a little squished because my laptop's doing a funny thing lately. I don't know how to fix it. Okay, so I call them keys to working with buyers. So what are your keys to working with your buyers? So some basic things are, first of all, you allow all of our clients are capable to use the internet to source houses that they would like to see. So you have to show your clients what value do you have. So you're able to look at the sold properties in the area as they are as well now recently, but you're going to be able to tell them what value, how to compare, how to sort of adjust the price on the houses that they're looking at because you're used to doing this every day. So you may say, okay, that one has a more modern kitchen versus this one didn't. I'm looking at lot size. I'm looking at, different aspects that I'm used to looking at on a daily basis that I know that I'll either add value or subtract value from that property. I'm also good at negotiating that with the other agent as well. So I'm showing them our value because everybody thinks they can sort of do it on their own these days with everything available online, and they don't realize the value that we have to them. So having a buyer agent means that having someone on their side to represent their interest in the transaction as well. So it's just like, I don't know if you guys watched my training last week for the for sale by owners. Like I explained to my for sale by owner clients, and I say to them, you definitely want somebody representing your interest in the transaction because we know how to read all the clauses and all the legalese all day, every day in those contracts we're reading. On the buyer's side, you want to make sure that there's someone representing you to insert those clauses. So just like a for sale by owner thinks they're saving the commission because they're not hiring an agent, our buyer clients very often think that they go directly to the listing agent and they're going to get a cheaper price for the property. But we all know that's not true. We all know that listing agent is going to take both sides of the transaction. And so I always talk to our buyer clients about being cautious about doing that. When you go into a listing, say you go into an open house on the weekend, you have to let them know, look, I have representation, which you do, which is me, your agent, because I'm going to be writing the contract on your behalf, making sure that you have clauses that are in your contract for that purchase that protect you, right? Going forward, should you have a problem with the property. So again, the next point that goes on to that we're familiar dealing with the contracts and clauses used in real estate transactions. You have to be very careful, especially when you guys grab those Schedule Bs off of the listing. I hope you guys are reading those because you guys are making your client sign them. So normally when we write our offer for our client, we're writing our Schedule A, and that's where we're putting in clauses that protect our clients, such as, their financing clause or their inspection clause, or the chattels and fixtures will be working upon closing. But when you pull that Schedule B off of their listing, you guys have to remember that that's their office. So if it's, a Royal LePage listing or another RE/MAX office, that individual office has created that Schedule B to protect them and their agents. So you want to make sure that you're reading things like, for instance, if it's all, brand new appliances, and some of their Schedule A's will say, the chattels and fixtures are as is. So I cross that off because I would say, no, 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 no. I don't want as is, because I want to make sure that these shiny new appliances all work. Because God forbid you walked in and say there was a brand new fridge and just out of fluke, it wasn't working. Okay. And you had your client sign that Schedule B from their office. You're out of luck. You can't fight and say, hey, that brand new fridge that looks shiny and new wasn't working. They'll say, I'm sorry, as per our Schedule B, you signed as is. So make sure you're reading those clauses and you're altering them. You can alter things that you don't feel represent your client. So even though I have put all the kits in web forms and SkySlope for you guys to use, I put clauses already. I loaded, I guess you should say, I loaded the Schedule A with all the clauses already. Those are just the regular clauses that I feel you guys need. Like when you're working with your buyer, if there's something that you should insert in there, like maybe they were concerned about a crack in the basement and the seller said, no, see, we have a pre-list and we've never had a problem with leaking. Maybe you insert a clause saying that in your Schedule A. So don't just print up the offer with what I have preloaded and take it and go. Every transaction is different and you're there to protect your buyer. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about showing our clients value. We're showing them that we're adding them value because we're representing them in this transaction, right? Only because we go along every day walking through houses and dealing with our clients and writing up offers, can we think of the things that we need in those contracts to protect our clients? Excuse me, I feel like I have a little sneeze stuck. Okay, so we're able to negotiate the best and fair price. So we have good negotiation skills. I know how to talk to other agents. Over time, you guys will hone in on these skills as well. But I know how to read other agents, kind of get a feel for whether I can get a little more off the price, or how I can take that argument using comparable properties and sort of show them that this property isn't worth as much or is worth more, whatever the case may be. And then make an emotional connection with your client, evaluate their needs. Analytical people know that you're knowledgeable. Amiable people need to know that you care about them. So obviously you should care about all of your clients. If they tell you, I really want to be in this pocket because my children love the school and all their friends are there, you're not going to show them lots of things out of the neighborhood because they're going to feel you're not working on their behalf. You didn't listen to what their needs were, right? But if you have an analytical client, you really want to address that as well. So I would say about 2 years ago, I sold a condo to he's a professor in Hamilton, and he wanted to move into Liberty Village area. And he kept on asking me very analytical questions, right? So I really honed in on that, and we're going to write back to him. I wrote him back some maybe a little bit statistics. Take a few seconds to go look at the market watch. I looked at year over year prices for building comparison, which kind of gained more in value and why I thought he should purchase in certain buildings in Liberty Village, right? Really appreciative. Your clients appreciate that. They're there for life then because they remember that service that you gave them, right? And then most importantly, I find this is a big place where a lot of our agents lack, not our agents in this office, but I mean just agents in general, is be present at closing to ensure that your buyer's interests are protected. Okay, so normally I shoot my clients a text on closing day and say, hey, closing day, little party emoji or something. And I say, if you guys need anything, let me know. Now, there's not a lot we can do at closing day. We know that by that point where things are usually out of our hands, but we can maybe suggest and direct to them things, which is often very helpful. So because I've sent that text, they might say, oh my goodness, XYZ happened. And you can go, oh, no problem. Like we can do, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example of something that's crashing on closing day. Like they said, oh, we drove by and they left some garbage on the curb. You might say, okay, no problem. What you need to do is just ensure your lawyer tells them that, if that garbage isn't picked up, maybe there'll be a back charge for removal of garbage there. So just make sure you're present at closing time, because one of the worst things you can do is sell them the property and then just forget about them. You'll never hear from that client again. It's not going to be good or a repeat business for you, right? Okay. The next thing I do with my buyers, and this is a super important step, I find a lot of people get a phone call or get a referral or meet someone and they send them properties and Then they just start going and showing properties to these people. Okay, as a new agent, as an old agent, we've all made this mistake at some point, but you want to try to avoid wasting your time. The biggest thing you want to do is you want to screen your buyer. Okay, so maybe when you first get a buyer, maybe you take a little time to sit down with them, at a coffee shop, or have a good, healthy conversation on the phone with them and figure out a few things. Okay, you want to make sure that your client's aware of all the costs. So everybody thinks, okay, yeah, the mortgage person said, I have a down payment. I have my $100,000 down payment, and I want to purchase something that's, $950,000. Okay. Do you have an additional $32,000? I'm just kind of spitballing. I think that's about approximately that much. $32,000 closing costs. Oh no, I only have the 100,000. Well, you have to make sure your client is aware of these costs, because at closing time, they're going to need that chunk for land transfer tax, right? So you want to talk to them about closing costs. You want to talk to them about what is the total down payment that your mortgage broker, your lending facility said that you need. What is the total land transfer tax? So if they're looking in Toronto about 950, I might go do the quick calculation and let them know it's about $32,000 you're going to need for your land transfer tax. And what are the lawyer's fees involved? Okay. I always remind the client to be careful with their credit. Okay. No large purchases, no credit cards, no job changes prior to closing. So I remember my father, anybody who hasn't heard me say 100 times, my father was a real estate agent our whole life. And when we first got our license, he reminded us to always tell your client, just because you got that new house, don't go out and buy stuff. Because he had one deal fall apart. He had purchased a house for one of his clients. They ran out and they got, I don't know, a brick card or Leon's card, I forget where it was. And they had bought all this beautiful furniture for the new house. And then come to closing time, their margins were so much right on the line that they didn't qualify for the mortgage when it came, because I guess the $10,000, $15,000 back in that day was a lot of money. That they bought in furniture that they'd taken out that brick card for, they didn't qualify for it anymore. So he always said, make sure, you have to remind your client, don't change anything. It's only a month or two before you're closing. Try not to change your job, right? Try not to rack up your credit. Hi, good morning. How are you? Try not to rack up your credit. Try not to have any large purchases. Don't go out and buy a car and get a new car payment, because you might just squeak by on that. Do you want to come sit here? You can sit here, no problem. So you might end up just squeaking by on that mortgage approval if you mess with your credit at all. Okay. And then you want to also remind your client that during the transaction, they're welcome to call you if they see any houses for sale. Hold on, I'm just letting someone in the room. Any houses for sale they may be interested in, whether it be via ads, for sale signs, open houses. If they do make an impromptu stop at an open house, remind them to notify the listing agent that they're working with an agent already. So super important. You lose a lot of clients when you don't sort of teach them to call you all the time. Okay. So when you pick up a new buyer, you want to say to them, if you ever go by and you see an open house sign or you see a for sale sign, call me. I'll let you know all about that house, right? Because what's the first instinct when your clients see that for sale sign? They want to call. They want to say, okay, John Smith has 123 Main Street for sale. I'm going to call him on his for sale sign. You don't want that, because then what's that listing agent going to do? The same thing we do with our listings. They try to convert them into their buyers, right? So what you want to do is you want to encourage them, look at wherever you go, if you see anything for sale, call me. I'll let you know. I have no problem. Shoot me a text. I'll let you know how much it is if they have a bid date. I try to get and sort of lure them in for information they don't have access to on realtor.ca. So we know everything's a bid date nowadays. So I say that to almost every buyer I'm working with. I'll call and let you know if they have a bid date or what day the bid date is. I'll give you that bid date information, right? Because I know they can't see that anywhere online. So, but especially the open houses, I have often give my clients my card. So when they walk into open houses, they give my card and say, no, it's okay. I have an agent already. Because you want to make sure that you're training your buyer clients to do that they're saying, no, I have representation already. Okay. And then we know that there's always get your BRA signed. So you want to explain this document to your client and point out your responsibilities to them and their responsibilities back to you, because a lot of people don't realize that when they sign that, they have the responsibility to use only you, right? So why do we do BRAs? BRAs are signed because, you know, you don't want to go and show them 40 houses and then this weekend they go to an open house, fall in love, and use the listing agent. You've just wasted 2 weeks of your time showing them all those places, right? So make sure you get the BRA signed as soon as possible and explain that document to them. All right, does anybody have any questions so far? How are you guys all doing online there? Okay, I want to go over this next document here about working with buyers. So one of the big things about working with buyers is that I definitely think that your clients, we take for granted that our clients know the difference between a deposit and a down payment. So I want to just go over that quickly. Let me stop the share and come back in so you guys online can see here. Okay. So we talked about having that little interview. I kind of missed it there quickly. I was saying when you start working with a new buyer, you should sit them down and you want to sit them down and talk to them about the cost. Do they have the down payment? Do they have the land transfer tax? Are they approved for their mortgage? That's a big one. I don't think I mentioned that when I was going over that document. It's kind of a no-brainer, but do you have your pre-approval done? Biggie for sure. But you also want to talk to your clients and ask them, do you know the difference between a deposit and a down payment? And they'll say, oh, a lot of people say it's the same thing, isn't it? You say, okay, no. Okay, your mortgage lender may tell you that you need $100,000 for your total down payment. Okay. But at the purchase price you're looking at, say $900,000, right? 10, you know, whatever. You generally need 5% to put as a deposit herewith or upon acceptance with your offers, right? So what you need is you need a tangible amount because that 100,000 may be locked in. Perhaps they're selling their home now and they need the money to come out of that home. Or maybe they're cashing in some of their RRSPs. Or maybe they're taking it out of savings or bonds or somewhere where they have to take that tip. It takes time to take that money out. So their mortgage person's told them, no problem, you need a total down payment 60 days after you put an offer in. Okay. But you want to explain to your clients that they need a deposit, a tangible deposit, usually 5% their purchase price within 24 hours of acceptance of an offer. So what I've seen happen a lot with new agents is they work with a buyer, they put in an offer, then they turn around and realize that once that offer is accepted, their client doesn't have the money ready. A lot of these people bank, you know, for instance, at Tangerine these days, where they can't go walk into the bank and get a draft. They don't have a physical teller where they can walk in and get a draft. They have to call in, and it takes 2 days to a week to get a draft in hand even, right? So what's going to happen now? You have an accepted offer, you've worked with them, and your client is unable to bring in a deposit within 24 hours, right? So you have to let them know that they need to have a tangible deposit, which is just a portion of that total down payment their mortgage person has told them. They need to have that tangible deposit within 24 hours of acceptance of an offer. Okay? Biggie, biggie. We as agents may take for granted that we know that that's what we need, but a lot of people out there don't understand that difference. And they don't realize they need it right away with the offer once the offer is accepted. Okay, so 6 things to know about real estate deposits, okay? I want to go over this because everybody kind of goes back and forth. And I've seen people say, well, you know, my client doesn't want the property anymore. They're having a little bit of buyer's remorse. Maybe they just don't bring the deposit today. Okay, so I want to go over real estate deposits because I've seen a lot of this stuff go through RICO and TREB, and a lot of lawsuits happen over the years. So when must a deposit be paid under the standard Ontario real estate contract? Okay. In Ontario, the standard real estate contracts give the buyer 2 choices: to pay immediately when you present your offer. So that's herewith. I give it with the offer right now. Or to pay within 24 hours after the seller accepts the offer. Most buyers prefer the second option. Okay. Because why? Because why pull a draft out of your bank account if it's unnecessary? What are situations where you'd put stuff herewith? You put a draft or a certified check herewith if, for instance, you're in a bidding war, okay? And you know why? A lot of people don't show up with deposits. So what do listing agents like to see? If, John Smith and Jane Smith are fighting over a property and John Smith's price is $10,000 less, or $10,000 more than Jane's, but Jane has her deposit right there. I guarantee you, me as a listing agent would say, choose Jane. I know Jane's $10,000 less, but what's going to happen if John doesn't show up with a deposit tomorrow? She has her deposit right here. Okay. I had the situation happen. I was selling a place in Markham a few years ago, and I had an agent who was right there it was a bidding war, and I had the agent right there in the driveway, and he was $10,000 to $15,000 less. And I had an agent on the phone communicating on email, and the lady communicating on email never showed up with the deposit the next morning. So I ran back to the guy who was in the driveway, and I was calling him the next day. Well, of course, now he's not $10,000 to $15,000 less. Now they're offering us $25,000 less, because now they know we're in a compromised situation, right? If they had just taken it that night, they would have been a done deal. So definitely herewith wins the bidding war when you have deposits herewith. Okay. Can the buyer just cancel the deal by refusing to pay the deposit after the deal is accepted? The answer is no. Okay. Once the deal is accepted, you cannot change your mind. If you do, the seller can sell the property again. And if they obtain less money than you were going to pay them, the seller can sue you for the difference plus legal fees. Okay. Now, as a listing agent, I could have advised my client that when they didn't show up with the deposit the next day, I could have said, hey, you know what? We're going to put this property back on the market. They sell less. We're going to sue those people. We'll keep their deposit. Big headaches. It takes years, year and a half, 2 years easily in the courts to try to get those things sorted out. So most of the time, what you're going to do is damage control, like I did, and just call the next person in line, whoever was second place in that bidding war day. But this is the consequences, and it's real consequences for your buyer. Okay. So you have to make sure you don't get your buyer into these situations. If they're not 100% sure, if they're on the fence, if you're not sure if they have the deposit ready, you want to make sure that you're not getting them to sign that contract. Okay. What happens if the deposit is paid late? If you're late with the deposit, the seller has the right to cancel the deal. This is because all time limits matter in real estate contracts. And if you're late, even by a few minutes, the seller can try and cancel, especially if the seller knows there's another buyer out there who will pay more money. If you need more time to come up with a deposit, it's wise to say so in the offer prior to acceptance. Okay. So let's give an example. Again, real things that I've seen happen. So I have a client, I got the property for $1 million, and he has until 6 p.m. the next day. That's the 24 hours after acceptance. 6 p.m. the next day. During this time, somebody else has called the listing agent and says to the listing agent, hey, my client wants to offer $1,050,000, right? So these people are excited now. They could have got $50,000 more. What are they going to do? If I walk into their office at 6:15 and try to give the deposit, they can legally, as per the contract, say, oh, I'm sorry, when you weren't here at 6:01, we signed with the other people who are giving us $50,000 more. Okay. Truly, and there's no real recourse for you. There's no way for you. You didn't protect your client. You didn't bring it there in 24 hours, and you didn't make them mindful of the contract, right? So make sure that you're paying attention to those things. How much should a buyer pay as a deposit so the seller will feel secure that the deal will close? So generally we see 5% of the sale price. Why is it 5%? Covers the commissions on both ends, usually 2.5 and 2.5. So we sort of like to see that. So they like to know that they have the security there, right? And generally 5% is a decent enough chunk that the purpose of the deposit is that people don't walk away from the written contract. So people don't sign it and go, oh, you know what? Yeah, I don't feel like buying that house anymore. They kind of have to have some skin in the game, knowing that they're not going to walk away. So 5% not only covers the commissions, and the money doesn't have to go back and forth from lawyers and different offices and stuff like that, but it also is a good enough chunk that people feel they're not going to walk away from it, right? Why can't the deposit be paid to the seller instead of the seller's agent? Why do we do that? Okay. If the seller goes bankrupt or disappears with the deposit, the buyer is not protected. When the deposit is held by the real estate brokerage, it is in trust and also protected by insurance. So I don't know if you guys know how things work. Each brokerage has 2 different bank accounts. So they have their regular banking account, which they do all their daily banking out of, maybe pay their rent, the lights, the staff, whatever the case may be. And then they have a real estate trust account. So every brokerage has a real estate commission trust account where nothing goes out of there without the transaction being closed, lawyer's directions, it doesn't move out of that account, right? Nothing gets paid out of that account. It's solely for holding commissions, okay? This happened after years and years of misuse of a lot of different accounts in the brokerages, so they made them have separate accounts. So if the buyer is not satisfied with their home inspection, how can the seller refuse to release the deposit back to the buyer? This happens more than you think. A deposit cannot be released unless both the buyer and seller agree. If the seller believes that the buyer did not act in good faith to satisfy their condition, whether it's a home inspection, financing, or condominium status certificate review, they can refuse to release the deposit. This means it stays in the broker's trust account until a judge decides who gets it, okay? So when a deposit has to come back, you have to sign a mutual release. Seller and buyer both have to agree to sign that mutual release. If for some reason the seller feels that you didn't act, like your buyer didn't act in good faith, they can refuse to sell it. So you don't want to say you do your home inspection, you want to say, you know what, the walls are kind of crooked and they didn't like this, and the buyers decided not to go through with it right now. It's not really a valid point, right? So I know it says to the discretion of the buyer if the inspection is satisfactory, but it should be something valid that's wrong with the property, that the reason that you're backing out on the deal. You have to have a valid reason. You have to be careful how you talk to the listing agent when you're trying to get your buyer out of a transaction, because if that seller doesn't sign the mutual release, it's not going to happen. They're not going to get their deposit back, right? Does anybody have any questions about deposits or down payments? How are you guys doing there online?
Yeah,
Sorry?
hi Christine, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, good, how are you?
Good, good.
So you covered the point, right? Within 24 hours, we have to give the deposit.
Yes.
Otherwise, like the 24 hours starts, I don't know, if offer is accepted, like
From
the
the
offer percentage.
acceptance. So that's why they make us put the time on the acceptance. You know how it says this offer was accepted at 6 p.m. on the third
Okay.
day of October 2023. So you know that it was signed at 6 p.m. It has to be in there by 6 p.m. But be mindful too, like if it is 10 p.m. that you sign it, or 11 p.m., because a lot of these deals go late, what
Yeah.
happens then? You have 24 hours, but you have to prove that you've delivered the deposit. So what do you do if the brokerage closes at 8, right? You
You
want
can
to
fix it.
make sure that you have some sort of communication with that agent. So if you meet that agent at midnight in a parking lot of a coffee shop and you hand over that deposit, I would take a picture of the deposit and I would shoot them a text with a picture of that deposit saying, please confirm you received, $75,000 for 23 Midburn, whatever the property is, today, from me. And I would have it in writing somehow. I wouldn't just randomly hand it over to them. Because normally when you go to the brokerages, you get a receipt for that deposit, right? When you're standing there, or your client gets it, whoever's dropping off the deposit. So just be mindful of that. Yeah, if you're signing it, whatever time you sign the acceptance, it should be within 24 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, we're just going to go take a look at the BRA now. So we talk about the BRA. The BRA is a good thing to sign. It's a necessary thing to sign, I should say, because it protects you. So basically it says that I am working with you in your best interest as your agent, but you're also hiring me to work for your best interest on your behalf, and that you're not going to go and work with any other agent. So I'm just going to take a quick look at it right now with you guys. So everyone always asks me too, when you go into these web forms, what's the difference between the Brampton and the Durham forms and that? It's just basically the logo on top. So I'm just going to try and find a general one. Let's go for Ontario. I'm pulling it up in web forms right now just for quick sake, but you guys should be trying to go in and explore a little bit in SkySlope. I am keeping the kits more up to date in SkySlope right now because it's going to change over from web forms anyways. So try to get in there and use your SkySlope. If you guys need any troubleshooting, just let me know. But basically, this is what our BRA looks like. Let me stop the share and come back in real quick just to make sure you guys have a view of it now. Okay, so this is what your BRA looks like. This is what you're going to get your client to sign, okay? So basically what you're doing is you're putting the brokerage information here. Because technically what they're doing is they're hiring the brokerage and we're working on behalf of the brokerage. Okay. So that's why the brokerage information goes here. I get asked that a lot from agents. Why don't we just put our name? Why is it the brokerage? Right. So you're going to get put in Remax Ace Realty. Okay. And whatever your client's address is, sorry, you put our address in here. We put their address later. So 1286 Kennedy. I don't necessarily have to fill this all out while we're doing the training here. I don't know why that's auto-populating, but our phone number, our fax number, and then you're going to put the buyer or the buyer's information. So this might be John Smith and his wife, Jane Smith, right? And you put their address in there. And then this is commencing on, I want to make sure it encompasses from the first time I'm showing them a property. And why? Because say I've been showing them for 2 weeks and I didn't get this signed 2 weeks ago. Well, I sign it today. Whatever deal I put in for them today is great. Now they want to go back and look at something I showed them 2 weeks ago, right? And they want to purchase that property. I showed it to them, but they go back and they talk to the listing agent. They buy with the listing agent and I've lost out on that sale. How do I prove that they had any kind of connection or loyalty to me as their agent if I haven't signed this for 2 weeks ago? So this is why they say sign this at the earliest possibility with your client before you have to put in offers or whatnot. Or you have to explain to them why you're making this, that you're not backdating the contract. You can sign this at the end today's date. But what I want to make sure is commencing. When does my contract commence with them? So if you haven't got it signed yet by your client and you've already been working for them for 2 weeks, what I want to do is I want to go here. So it's the 3rd of October today, for instance. Here I'm going to put 2 p.m. and I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to say, technically I showed you that property 2 p.m. back on the 20th of September. That was the very first property I showed you. And I've been showing you sort of, every other day since, right? Okay. And then I'm going to make it valid for a couple months, usually we do 3 or 4 months. Okay. Here, you do not get your client to initial here unless you make this time period more than 6 months. So you see it says if the time period for this agreement exceeds 6 months, the brokerage must attain initials. That's the only time we get initials here. So normally we do 3-4 months. Why? Because you should be able to find a buyer or a house within 3 or 4 months if you're working actively with them, right? What are reasons I might get them to sign for longer than 6 months? Anybody know? Anybody had to sign an agreement more than 6 months? I think I'd get my client to sign something. For instance, we had a client recently. She wanted to purchase a bungalow in a neighborhood where there were next to no bungalows. Serious, the inventory was just not there. Everything was 2-story. There was maybe one bungalow style on every other street, maybe in a whole little pocket, 10 bungalows. So what are the chances something is going to go up for sale? Or maybe they say, I very specifically want this size lot in an area where it's all small lots. Like say we're talking East York, they say, no, I need at least a 50-foot lot, and I know East York is kind of skinnier lots. They're normally 33, 35, right? Maybe I get them to sign a little bit longer if there's something very, very specific that they're looking for that I feel like I'm going to spend a lot of time and this inventory doesn't come up a lot. Okay. Other than that, we normally get them to sign less than that. Then we go on to property type use. So normally we put single family residential here. That's just because that's mostly what we're looking for all day, but you can change this anytime. Multi-residential, commercial, recreational, like whatever they're looking for, industrial, whatever you want to put here that your client is actually looking for. And then we get to the geographic location. So I find a lot of people put, okay, Toronto. Oops. So Toronto's not incorrect if your client is looking in Toronto. But what happens if they go and you've shown them again the 30 houses and they purchased something in Pickering? Because they've been looking East Scarborough and they're not finding what they want. And now they're just over the border. Okay. And they technically say to you, well, I only signed with you to work in Toronto. Now, but you're saying, well, we were looking right there, at Port Union. We're minutes away from, Altona. Like we're really, really close. Doesn't matter. Your BRA will not cover it. So what I suggest is I would put GTA and surrounding areas. Because now I'm covered if my client buys North York, East York, Scarborough, or Pickering, because that's the surrounding area of GTA, right? So I try to be as broad as possible to encompass everything I can for my clients to sort of put them in that catchment area. Every now and then you'll get a very specific client who goes, no, I only want you to put Toronto here because when I go in Hamilton, I'm looking with another realtor. They'll be really honest with you about that. You go, okay, fine. Even though I'd probably travel to Hamilton to show them properties, but fair enough. I've had somebody told me not just to put a single address on there. So they happen upon, a listing, they called me and it's 123 Main Street. They tell me to put 123 Main Street in here because they don't want any ties to me aside from that property. So you have to be mindful of what your clients know, but most of the time being really vague there helps you out as the agent. Okay. And then you get them to initial here to say, yeah, no, I'm not working with any other agent. Okay. They're acknowledging that they know that that's what this contract is, that they're not working with any other agent. And initials a brokerage or you, so you're signing on behalf of the brokerage. Okay. And then here it says, if during the currency of this agreement, the buyer enters into an agreement to purchase any property of the general description indicated above, the buyer agrees that the brokerage is entitled to be paid a commission of. Okay, so that sounds like a whole lot of jargon. What does that basically mean? Again, happens. You show 20 properties to somebody and they go, hey, you know what? I really want to see this property and you can't find it anywhere on MLS. You realize it's a for sale by owner. Now what do? That for sale by owner says, no, I'm not paying co-op commission, but that's the property your client wants to buy. What are you going to do? What happened to all your time that you spent now? Okay. What you're going to do is you're going to put 2.5% in there because why? 2.5% is generally what's offered for the co-op brokerage from listings. Now what you're doing is you're getting your buyer to say, if in some instance, I'm not covered by the listing, for instance, if it's a for sale by owner, or it's a mere posting or something on MLS, you're going to give me the 2.5%. You're still going to make your commission at the end of the day. And it's happened. Like I had a for sale by owner. I forget, where did Simone live? What's the name of that building there? Queensway. She ended up buying that off of for sale by owner. She purchased it, and so she had to pay me the commission at the end of the day because that for sale by owner was just some single lady and she wasn't entertaining any commission for others. Actually, I think she paid 0.5 of the commission because she was offering 0.5, and then my buyer paid the rest. Okay. Or you can put different kinds of structure in these two lines. Generally, just the straight 2.5 is all you need though. And then the buyer agrees to pay the brokerage such commission if the buyer enters into an agreement within 90 days. I'm going to put 90 days here. So 90 days is the holdover period. So another thing that we get a little confused about, we put holdover periods in our listings as well. When we load our listings, what's a holdover period? Okay. They introduced this because what was happening a lot back in the day, holdover periods weren't always around since the beginning of time, at least since the beginning of time of me doing contracts, they didn't exist. A buyer would come in and they would start talking to, say, the seller, and the seller would say to them, hey, you know what though? I got to pay this agent 40,000 commission, or 20,000 commission, whatever the case may be. But my listing's expiring with him this Friday. Okay. So why don't you come back after the weekend and we'll do something private and you can get a little bit off the price and I don't have to pay the full commission. Okay. So agents were working both listing and buyer side really, really hard. And then people were writing them out of deals. So you get all the exposure of us putting it up on MLS and showing the property and marketing the property and doing all the things. And then buyers and sellers were sort of hooking up privately on their own. So this 90-day period, when you go to explain it to your buyers, is just telling them, look, if I showed you a property today and in 3 months, you still realize you like that property and it's still for sale, okay, it means that even 90 days after our contract expires, I showed you that property, I introduced you to that property, I still have rights to commission because I introduced you to it. You know what I mean? I sent it to you, I emailed it to you, I booked the showing, I took my car, my gas, my time, and I went and I showed you that property, right? So that's the 90 days if your client ever asks, okay? And you should be able to, you guys, I know it's really boring and it's really, really sucky, but you see all these really, really long clauses in here, definitions and interpretations, commission, all the pre-printed clauses in here. Read them. Just take one time in your career and read them. So when you see what it is, you can quickly explain to your client what it is, because you're going to look dumb the one day you get that client that asks you, hey, what does that mean? Right? Even though they're pre-printed clauses and we don't write any of them in, we should still know what they entail, sort of a brief synopsis of what it is. So take a little time to read it over just once in your career and then sort of remember it from there.
You
And
put
then,
the 2.5% there in the top.
sorry?
You put the 2.5% in the second. Oh, is it?
Yeah, I put 2.5% here
Okay.
for the sale of the property and then 90 days for the holdover.
Okay.
But
But
you
some
could all,
people,
you
some
could put
people
different.
not listed, right? Some people sometimes 2%, right? So
Yeah, exactly. So like I say, when you're explaining these things to your client and you're going over the contract, sometimes you have a smart cookie client who will ask you and say, hey, you know what? I know in the area, I'm looking in Hamilton right now, and they only offer 2%. Why are you putting 2.5 in there? Nobody makes 2.5. I'll say, okay, fair enough. And I'll reduce it to 2. Or they might say, I don't want to pay you 2.5% on my own. Well, you're going to have to negotiate what you're comfortable with. If you show them 20 properties and they end up buying it for sale by owner and they owe you commission, are you okay if you only write 1.5 in your contract? Maybe. Okay, because you know it's coming out of their pocket at this point. But normally I just write in 2.5 because it's kind of the standard, right? Industry standard. Okay. And then we get to the end here and it's pretty basic. You put your name here to sign for the brokerage. You put the buyer's names here to sign. You have your declaration of insurance. So you're saying, yeah, no, I'm up to date. My RICO's all good. Check me online. I'm all insured. And then you put the acknowledgement here. So even though we did the terms of the contract are, the beginning is the 20th September and the end is the 30th of January, they're just acknowledging that, yes, that's when that's sort of the period that they've been covered by you, that you've been representing them. But you don't have to backdate this part of the contract. You can say that they signed it on the 3rd because they know what the contents are, as long as you've explained it to them. I don't try to slip it in and like just trick your client and make them sign with the 20th on top and the 3rd at the bottom. I always try to do different dates because I find nobody really gets these concepts of what the term of the contract is. But I would explain to my client it's because I put it the 20th at the top because remember that first property at 123 Main Street, that's the first time I met you and I started showing you. So since then I've been showing you properties. So anything I've shown you along the way, I'm protected for, right? Because like I say, if I go, oh shoot, I didn't get my BRA signed and I'm putting in an offer today. So now I got to put this BRA here and I put the 3rd at the top of this contract because it's today and I didn't get it signed on the 20th. And now I put the offer in today and he doesn't get the property today. And then he goes, I want to go and get that one we saw last week. And like I say, he goes back directly and buys it from the listing agent. You have no BRA to protect you for last week, even though you showed him that property, right? So you want to make sure that you're keeping in mind when you're signing your contracts, how you're protecting yourself and your client, but you're protecting yourself with your BRA, right? And then they're going to sign and acknowledge that they got a copy at the bottom here as well. There we go. The time always goes by so fast. I have like 10 more things to talk about. We'll have to save it for another day. How's everybody online? Do you guys have any questions? You guys all good? Excellent, excellent. Everybody here good? Do you guys have any questions? You guys working with any fun buyers right now? Do you guys find your buyers are getting a little more confident now that the rate like was frozen and it didn't go up? Or are they all still scared and hiding? I find, like I say, just in the last week, my showings have picked up on my listing. And I'm like, oh, people are actually, otherwise it was quiet. It was so quiet. I was getting no showing requests. And now all of a sudden this week, I'm like, oh, I'm getting showing requests. People are calling to see my property. I'm like, finally. So I'm happy about that. I think it's going to move a little bit. Hopefully people will get less and less scared. So, yeah, but if you guys need anything or you have any questions about those contracts we just went over, let me know. Our potluck is this Friday. We have tons of yummy food coming in. It's always a craziness. We always have like tables and tables of food. So come on out, tell me what dish you're gonna bake or cook and bring, and let me know. And I will hopefully see you guys all on Friday for Thanksgiving. All right. Everybody take care. Have a good week.
And thank
All
you.
right, thank
you.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
No problem, no problem.
Just one final question about the location. If you work with you buy a client, right? Can you add like 2, 3 municipality, or you got to stick with one region, like let's say it's
no.
in the
You can put whatever's valid there. So if you say, I would say, if someone's looking sort of Scarborough and Pickering or Ajax, I might put GTA, Durham, and surrounding areas. Right? And surrounding areas is one of those things that you kind of
Okay.
always throw in.
Yeah.
So because it could encompass anything. You know what I mean? And you at least have a fighting chance. It's kind of one of those lawyer terms that you put in saying, yeah, I said surrounding areas. It meant whatever, right? But sometimes, you know, it doesn't 100% protect you, but always put surrounding areas. But if they were looking like Scarborough and Markham, I might put, you know, like GTA York or GTA Halton, like whatever they're looking, and you can put multiple in there.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem, no problem. All right, everyone, you have a lovely week. I will hopefully see you all on Friday. Take care. Talk to you all
Cheers,
soon.
well,
I
thank
forgot
you.
to send out my recording from last week, so you guys are getting 2 links today. I totally forgot to send out last Tuesday's training. So anyways, have a good week. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.